The anointed ones, welcome. Leadership isn't about holding on to everyone. It's about knowing who truly belongs by your side. Not every person you retain is a victory, and not every person you lose is a loss. Consider this. You believed everything was ideal, only to discover that someone secretly sought a specialist to evaluate you. Not just a friend's opinion, but a true expert trained to analyze every detail. And the results? They didn't align with their expectations. But does that define you? No. You were never meant to be measured by their limited vision. You are destined to lead, not to seek approval. The trials you faced were never about proving yourself to others, but about realizing your own strength. The throne was always yours. Now, you are simply stepping into it. Most individuals are unaware of this, yet 85% of relationships end due to unconscious incompatibility rather than a lack of love. This implies that even if you are deeply in love with someone, you may still be totally inappropriate for them. No matter how adorable you two seem in pictures, if your spirits aren't in harmony, something will inevitably fall apart. Now, picture a professional evaluating your relationship without the use of romantic feelings or wishful thinking. What did they discover? Was this a ticking time bomb? Or were you really intended to be? Hold on tight, because the reality is about to strike you harder than discovering that your Wi-Fi is down just before you're going to binge watch. First, a measurement of your soul frequency revealed whether it aligned or clashed. They looked at more than simply your common objectives, personality, or way of life. They delved deeper into your soul vibration, which is something that most people never think about in partnerships. Each individual has a distinct energy frequency that influences how they relate to and engage with other people. It's the unadulterated reality of who you are. You can't alter or fake it. An expert recruited to evaluate compatibility looks at more than simply chemistry or shared interests. They research the alignment or conflict of your energy. Some people have a high frequency of vibration, which indicates that they are self-aware, spiritually developed, and always evolving. Others have lower frequencies, are mired in recurring patterns, are resistant to change, or have unresolved emotional baggage. It will seem like you're attempting to carry someone up a mountain when they don't want to climb, if your frequency is much greater than your partner's. It will eventually become unsustainable and be draining and frustrating. This explains why, despite your best efforts, some relationships seem strange. It's about the unseen electromagnetic imbalance, not about love or effort. If your partner's energy keeps you stagnant and yours keeps you moving ahead, the relationship will gradually break you. The specialist probably examined if spending time with this individual increases or decreases your frequency. Someone who naturally enhances your strength, clarity, and tranquility is a real match, not simply someone you get along with. The true issue is whether they saw your energy as a catalyst for change in your relationship or as a ticking time bomb. It was obvious that the relationship would end if the frequencies were too far apart. It's because energy doesn't lie, not because you were both awful people. Love is only one aspect of compatibility. Another is whether your soul vibrations are in harmony or at odds with one another. Second, they asked whether you would cure them or reveal their darkest secrets. They examined the aspects of your relationship that most people overlook until it's too late, rather than just focusing on how well you got along. Every connection has an evident influence on both parties involved. Some relationships are comfy, simple, and predictable. Others force you to confront issues you've been ignoring for years, acting as a mirror reflecting your deepest wounds. It was the expert's responsibility to identify yours. Some people seek peace rather than change when they enter into relationships. They seek stability, approval, and company. However, what happens if they fall in love with someone who inherently makes them face their own darkness? Being with someone whose energy is strong, awake, and unyielding is like that. Your partner isn't just dating you if you have a high level of self-awareness. They are also learning about who they really are. And that's too much for some people. The specialist probably assessed the potential for healing or harm in your relationship. Would your presence encourage them to develop, break old patterns, and change? Or would they become defensive, threatened, and exposed? Some people are content to be comfortable rather than strive for improvement. And they either step up to the challenge or ruin the relationship to avoid the pressure when they meet someone who challenges their traditional ways of thinking, acting, and being. This is why certain relationships start strong but end in chaos. It's not that the love wasn't real. It's that one person's presence brought too much truth to the surface. The expert likely saw whether your partner had the capacity to embrace that truth, or if they would resist it until the relationship inevitably fell apart. Because in the end, love isn't enough if someone isn't ready to heal. They will always choose their comfort zone over their soulmate. Number 3, they looked for a spiritual glass ceiling. Would you outgrow them? They weren't just looking at where you and your partner are today. They were looking at where you're going. Most people assume love is enough to sustain a relationship, but that's not true. Growth is the real glue. If two people aren't evolving at the same pace, they will eventually drift apart, no matter how deep their connection feels right now. The expert wasn't just analyzing who you are as a couple, but whether your futures would still align 5, 10, or 20 years from now. Some people are meant to expand, constantly evolving into higher versions of themselves. They crave knowledge, self-improvement, and experiences that push them beyond their limits. Others reach a certain level and stay there, content with who they are, uninterested in change, and even resistant to anything that challenges their current mindset. If one partner is on an upward trajectory, while the other remains stagnant, the relationship will start to feel uneven, unfulfilling, and ultimately suffocating. The expert presumably looked at whether your companion had a spiritual or intellectual glass ceiling. Would they ultimately struggle to grasp your growth? As you assumed your authority, would they start to feel uneasy? Would they unknowingly hold you back because your growth made them feel left behind? This is when many relationships slowly die. Not in major conflicts, but in the steady understanding that one person is outgrowing the other. Love is simple when both individuals remain the same, but what happens when one person evolves and the other refuses to move? That's what they were attempting to forecast. If the experts observed that your trajectory was boundless, but your spouse was someone who hated change, they understood what would happen. Either you would reduce yourself to sustain the connection, or you would outgrow it totally. Neither scenario leads to actual satisfaction, since the truth is, the proper relationship won't compel you to pick between love and progress. It will require both. And if they recognized that wasn't feasible, the outcomes weren't simply disappointing. They were inevitable. Number 4. They examined whether your spouse would perceive you as an asset or a danger. They weren't just looking at how much your spouse loved you. They were looking at how they managed your light. Not everyone who loves you is actually glad for you. Greatness attracts some individuals, but as they approach it, they begin to despise what they are unable to duplicate, control, or eclipse. The specialist had to decide whether your spouse saw your abilities as something to be admired or as something to subtly rival. You will automatically draw attention, possibilities, and favor if you're picked. Even when you're not trying, people notice you because of your energy alone, which compels presence. This is encouraging for a secure partner. They want to develop with you and create something even bigger with you because they sense your brightness. However, your sheer presence may seem like a danger to an insecure spouse. They may not express it directly, but their tone will make it clear. Passive-aggressive comments, subtly trying to make you seem less brilliant, or abruptly becoming aloof when you succeed. Most likely, The expert saw how your spouse responded to your potential, influence, and authority. Did they feel compelled to suppress or limit it? Or did they promote it? Not because they want to develop a connection with an equal. Some individuals get into partnerships because they want to feel needed. The partnership was already on the verge of a silent war if they saw your power as a task rather than a gift, one in which your development would always seem like an issue rather than a triumph. In your company, a real partner will feel inspired rather than inferior. They will work together rather than compete with you. The expert recognized that a power struggle would soon develop in the partnership if they sensed jealousy, animosity, or concealed uneasiness. In fact, if someone perceives your light as threatening, they will ultimately attempt to reduce it, and those who profess to love you are your most deadly adversaries. Fifth, their basic programming was used to forecast the relationship's future. They weren't only examining your relationship as it is now. They were also examining the invisible factors influencing your partner's behavior, factors that even they may not be completely aware of. People behave according to their subconscious programming, which consists of deeply ingrained ideas and habits that were created long before you ever met them, rather than what they claim to desire. It was the expert's responsibility to ascertain if your partner's basic programming would strengthen the bond or gradually destroy it. The majority of individuals have unresolved childhood traumas that influence how they respond to emotional closeness, trust, conflict, and love. They could unconsciously anticipate instability if they were raised in an unstable environment. They could undermine genuine love, since it seems strange to them if they were never offered healthy affection. Do they push others away when things become too personal? That is what the expert would have looked for. Do they have a hidden belief that they are not deserving of love? When things start to get better, do they have a tendency to destroy themselves? If that's the case, their love for you wouldn't make those patterns go away. Whether you saw it coming or not, they were going to happen. The specialist probably also looked at their views on success, loyalty, and relationships. Would they betray you too if they grew up in a culture that accepted treachery as normal? Would they make the relationship a conflict rather than a collaboration if they were trained to see love as a power struggle? Individuals must consciously decide to rewire their programming in order to break free from it. The expert may have predicted the result even if your spouse hadn't done that inside work. Relationships break down for this reason, albeit it's never really unexpected. In their routines, habits, and ingrained beliefs, the signals were constantly there. The expert examined what was already ingrained in your relationship, not simply what they had promised. Because love simply makes subconscious wiring visible. It doesn't change it. Sixth, they looked at whether being with your spouse made you shine brighter or brighter. They were examining how you changed while you were with your spouse, not simply how they treated you. In some relationships, it's like walking into the sun. You feel more lively, lighter, and clearer. You become more self-assured, more creative, and life appears to be going your way. Your soul seems to be slowly and imperceptibly drained by other interactions. The activities that used to seem easy suddenly appear laborious, your energy seems heavier, and your clarity wanes. The expert had to decide whether your partner's presence was softly extinguishing your fire or igniting it. The vitality of a person is infectious. You will sense someone's emotional instability, worry, or insecurity, even if they don't express it verbally. You'll find yourself doubting previously held beliefs. Your excitement will wane. Even if you are unable to provide an explanation, your inner voice will begin to hint that something is wrong. These changes would have been noted by the expert. Did your soul appear to fade, or did it radiate brighter around them? Your energy is your power, if you are selected. Your spiritual connection, creativity, and intuition are not only personal qualities, they are a component of your destiny. When you phone the incorrect person, they not only waste your time, but also cut you off. The expert probably noticed if you unintentionally reduced your energy to maintain harmony, prevent conflict, or give your spouse a sense of security, or whether your partner spontaneously increased your energy. They understood that maintaining the connection would be too costly if you had to dull your brightness in order to keep it going. Some relationships give you a sense of limitlessness and extend your perspective, much like the boundless sky. Others keep you tiny and restrict your possibilities, much like a cage. The expert was considering the relationship's long-term impact on your soul, not simply how happy you were at the time. They were aware that if your light was already dimming, it would either go out entirely or you would have to release yourself. The seventh step was determining if you were seen as a placeholder or a priority. They were examining why your spouse was with you in the first place, not simply how much they liked you. Being convenient and being chosen are two different things. Too many individuals get into relationships because they need companionship, solace, or a diversion from themselves, rather than because they have discovered someone who is really irreplaceable. The expert had to decide whether your spouse saw you as a permanent fixture in their life, or as someone who filled a void. A true spouse views you as a gift rather than a contingency plan. They walk confidently, giving you a sense of security, importance, and priority. However, a person's emotional involvement remains superficial when they are only wasting time with you. Even if they say the right things, they constantly hesitate, are reluctant to commit completely, have a tendency to leave their choices open, and exude an air that implies they are just there for the time being. The expert would have searched for trends, such as whether your partner avoids long-term conversations or works toward a future with you. Do they prioritize you, or do they only come when it's convenient for them? The expert recognized that you weren't their ultimate destination if your relationship felt like an emotional waiting room where you were constantly hoping for more but never quite getting it. Those who are afraid of being alone will cling to whoever is available. However, soul recognition is not the same as that connection. Whether your spouse has a history of short-term attachment cycles, superficial relationships, or an unwillingness to truly commit, was probably examined by the expert. If so, they were aware that the relationship would end due to its own emptiness as soon as their dread of loneliness subsided or a better alternative presented itself. There is no hesitancy, no second-guessing, and no good enough for now attitude when one is fully selected. If the experts saw that you were perceived as a placeholder, they understood it was only a matter of time until your partner's genuine motives showed themselves. The sad reality is that if someone doesn't fear losing you, it's because they never had any actual plans to do so. Eighthly, they evaluated if your spouse is a distraction or a driving force behind your objective. They were examining whether your spouse maintained you in line with your mission or subtly drew you away from it, not simply if they made you happy. The lives of the chosen are not typical. You have a divine purpose, a journey that calls for self-awareness, self-control, and a setting that supports your development. The specialist had to decide whether your spouse was a force for your development or a covert impediment masquerading as affection. The perfect individual will stoke your passion, encourage you to reach your full potential, and help you see your life's purpose. They won't feel intimidated by your cause. They will actively support it. But the incorrect person, whether purposefully or not, will add distractions, emotional instability, and delays that steadily drag you off track. Some relationships come into your life like anchors, weighting you down with unneeded drama, insecurity, or stagnation. The expert likely assessed whether your connection provided more focus or more uncertainty. Were you moving closer to your purpose, thinking more expansively, and doing more with them? Or did their presence cause emotional upheaval, mental confusion, and a gradual disengagement from your purpose? It's not always easy to see distractions. They might seem as persistent interpersonal issues, ongoing miscommunications, or the urge to constantly making corrections rather than moving on. The expert would see it as a divine mismatch if your energy was being used on recurring cycles of attempting to maintain the relationship, restore damaged trust, or show your value. They were aware that staying longer would cause you to put off your objective further, giving up your strength in the name of love. A good partner would walk beside you in your mission rather than compete with it. The experts understood the conclusion was inevitable if they saw that your relationship was gradually dragging you away from your true self. This is because you would either pick the connection and lose yourself in the process, or you would choose your objective and outgrow it. And there is no bigger loss than that for a chosen one. The ninth was an assessment of the generational cycles and the impact of their forebears. They were examining the factors that molded your spouse long before you two met, not simply your partner. We don't just fall in love with someone. We unwittingly become part of their family, their generational trends, and the unresolved traumas inherited from their ancestors. The expert had to decide whether your spouse came from a family that valued stability, loyalty, and achievement, or if they bore hereditary responsibilities that may upend your life. Divorce, addiction, betrayal, poverty, and emotional neglect are just a few of the cycles that quietly recur in every family. These cycles are not arbitrary. Rather, they are ingrained in a person's mind and shape their views on self-worth, love, and trust. In order to determine if your spouse was repeating these patterns or deliberately breaking them, the expert most likely looked at their family history. Did dysfunction become normalized in their family? Were unresolved trauma, unstable finances, or broken relationships recurring themes? In that case, unless individuals had taken the effort to break free, these patterns weren't only a thing of the past, they were a blueprint for their future. Ancestral karma, a spiritual obligation inherited from past generations as a result of unresolved anguish, betrayals, or wrongdoings, is carried by many individuals without realizing it. The expert anticipated that these wounds would eventually show up in your relationship if your spouse had not addressed or healed them. Unexpected difficulties, emotional burdens that aren't yours, or a string of bad luck connected to their energy might begin to affect you. Generational programming cannot be overcome by love alone. The expert could foresee the outcome. The relationship would go in the same manner if your spouse was still functioning according to the same cycles that afflicted their ancestors. The correct individual actively chooses to end poisonous patterns and establish a new reality. They don't just come from a healed lineage. The specialist was safeguarding your future in addition to assessing your love. Because when you join someone in life, you not only get their love, but also their karma, habits, and unresolved conflicts. And you would have to bear the burden if they weren't actively recovering. 10th, they examined the extent of soul awareness and emotional safety. They were searching for something more profound, the type of connection that transcends attraction and enters the realm of soul recognition, rather than just chemistry or common interests. True compatibility is determined by whether your nervous system is at ease in their company, not by how much fun you have together or how intense the relationship seems. The specialist had to ascertain if there were covert indications of energy imbalance or whether this partnership seemed secure on a fundamental level. Intensity is sometimes confused with love. They believe it must be exceptional because of the thrill, the fixation, and the sense of being hooked on someone. They are unaware, however, that trauma attachments may seem much like love until they begin to ruin you. Most likely, the expert searched for indications that your relationship was based on true soul alignment, or whether it was just the repetition of past traumas. Did their withdrawal from your relationship cause significant worry, emotional highs and lows, or cycles of abandonment? If so, they were aware that your feelings were an addiction to a familiar kind of suffering rather than true love. It feels different to recognize your soul. It isn't disorderly. It doesn't make you doubt your position all the time. It has a homey atmosphere. The specialist would have seen your body's reaction while your lover was around. Did you inadvertently stiffen up, or did you relax? Were you quietly changing, filtering, or shrinking? Or did you feel free to be who you were? When a link is really safe, the body can tell. Your body will not remain in fight or flight state. Unresolved trauma survivors often seek out companions who reflect their previous traumas. The expert recognized that no matter how strong your relationship seemed right now, it would soon break down under the weight of its own dysfunction if they discovered that it was based more on pain than genuine compatibility. Because true love feels like an exhale rather than a battleground. 11th, they looked into secret energy and spiritual linkages that are invisible. They were searching for what was under the surface rather than only focusing on what was readily apparent. Even if someone is pleasant, physically appealing, and says all the right things, their energy will ultimately contaminate everything around them if they have negative spiritual attachments. The expert had to decide if your spouse was really on your side, or whether they were being discreetly influenced by invisible influences, like unresolved trauma, debts from a previous life, or even outside forces. Chaos isn't always random. A person's life may sometimes be characterized by unexplainable tragedies, emotional instability, or a disturbing trend of failed relationships. This may be the consequence of unresolved spiritual baggage, rather than just poor luck. Your partner's unresolved trauma scars would no longer be just theirs. They would also become yours. In order to find any distortions, obstructions, or indications of heavy, sluggish energy that can undermine your own spiritual alignment, the specialist most likely examined their aura. Unresolved sorrow, addiction, or karmic obligations from previous lives might cause some individuals to unintentionally attract low-frequency beings. Those who are close to them experience an energy drain as a result of these bonds. The specialist would have searched for signs. Did being near them make you feel less energetic? Did you begin to experience weird disruptions in your life, weariness, or unexpected changes in your emotions? If so, your companion was carrying something considerably deeper than merely emotional baggage. Love is not always heavenly. Certain relationships are purposefully designed to be tests, diversions, or even traps from a spiritual standpoint. The specialists understood the partnership wasn't secure if they detected interference, an energy presence that wasn't simply theirs, but something connected to them. It's true that when you merge with someone, you take on their energy, their struggles, and all that comes after them, in addition to their love. Additionally, your tranquility, your path, and even your destiny may be at jeopardy if they were spiritually damaged. They assessed your neurological system's reaction to their presence, which is number 12. They were listening to your body's hidden reality, not simply your opinions about the relationship. Your neurological system already determines if someone is safe, long before your mind tries to explain, defend, or make excuses. When you were with your spouse, the expert probably saw the cues your body was sending. Your body doesn't tell lies. Everything is revealed via subtle physiological changes. When they walked in, did your breathing deepen and slow, or did it become shallow without your knowledge? Did you instinctively stiffen up, or did your shoulders loosen up while they were around? Was there a persistent pressure in your stomach that you choose to ignore, or did it seem open and light? One of the most obvious markers of stress or safety, heart rate variability, may have even been tested by the specialist.